We are back here on the Lynne Hayes Freeland Show. You know, Zoom is an amazing thing because it lets us tell stories that we wouldn't otherwise get to tell. Joining me now, Dannielle Brown, who you may recall because we got to interview her, I guess, about a year and a half ago, telling the story of her son, Marquis Brown. She is joined today by her attorney, who is a very familiar face, Lee Merritt, and a face that we have not seen before. We haven't met before, Vanessa McCullers. Danielle, I'm going to start with you because you're holding a big event on Saturday, recognizing what has happened to your son, and your quest for answers.
Yes, this Saturday, I am doing a march in honor of my son, Marquis Jaylen Brown. And I'm encouraging the students in the community to join me so that we can bring some attention back to my son's case. I call it Ground Zero, returning to Ground Zero. There are still a lot of unanswered questions. Still, people are not forthcoming with information. Some are inboxing me now, but at this time, just really bringing awareness that my son existed, that we're very much still trying to get answers to what has happened to him.
And Mr. Merritt, I mean, the Brown family is just one of countless numbers of families that you are fighting for. And it exemplifies the frustration, the anger, the hurt, and the resolve of Black mothers across the country.
Yeah, so it's important that when Dannielle calls it Ground Zero, when you think of Ground Zero, you think that, that's where not only where this tragedy happened, but if we look at everything that's happening in the country, we're in a crisis mode. We were paying attention to now the ongoing genocide of all these families, and Danielle's family is one of the families who have been there since Ground Zero. George Floyd was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. And what we're seeing is that almost what appears to be an endless tide of mourning families, in particular, dealing with how law enforcement interacts with Black men and women, how law enforcement engages the Black community. Jaylen was, and I don't know if Dannielle minds if I call him Jaylen. That's what they call him.
They know. That's what we call him, Jaylen.
Okay, great. Jaylen, or JB as he was known, was a student. He was. I honestly, I fell in love with him as the father of me fell in love with him because he's the son I always wanted. He's a big, strong, brawny kid who was just in love with life, just celebrated his 21st birthday, had just gotten back from Hawaii with his mother. And he should still be with us today. But during a law enforcement encounter where he appeared to be in some sort of mental or physical distress, when law enforcement should have been able to respond to him and say, hey, this is a kid in distress that we must be able to protect. They were alone in a room with him, and he went out of the window 16 stories to his death. And we don't know more about what happened a year and a half later. Other than that, we do know that law enforcement have been trained, or that there are requirements that they're trained to deal with crisis situations with something other than brute force, that they're supposed to be guardians, that they should have been able to save Jaylen, and they didn't. And it's not enough to say, well, we don't know what happened, it probably was suicide. I don't. That case is probably one of the more frustrating ones for me because we looked at a lot of options. We looked at CTE. Maybe this was something that Jaylen, was struggling with, and he needed help. Number one, our NCAA should be looking at athletes, protecting athletes from the dangers of CTE. But as we looked at his brain, it did not appear that he had CTE. And so it really came back down to the conduct of those police officers in his dorm room and whether or not they should have the responsibility of keeping him safe, even if they claim they're not responsible for the harm to him. Unfortunately, there were no body cameras, which they should have had on, to tell us what happened. But we know that in an isolated situation like that, he should not have died, and we want answers.
You want answers, in fact, as many mothers do. And Vanessa, that's where I want to bring you into the conversation, but I know that Lee has to go. So we're going to take a commercial break. We're going to let him go, and then we'll come back, and I want to talk to you. I mean, because all of these mothers have similar Pain. They have similar pain. And I want to talk about the organization and tie this all together. We'll do that in just a second when the Lynne Hayes Freeland show continues. Don't go away.